Hello everyone, today we are going to be talking about the trade rumors that have emerged in the last 24 hours, and something, now that I actually look at the contract situation and I understand what is moving forward for the Toronto Raptors, I understand it. And that is that Norman Powell is likely to be traded from the Toronto Raptors, per reports from Michael Grange, I believe, from Sportsnet. And here's the idea behind it, right? Obviously, the fact is that Norman Powell has played very, very well this season, and so they're obviously not trading him because they don't think he's good. But part of it is wanting to sell high, but part of it is also just due to the fact that because he's played this well, he's going to command a lot of money this summer. And he is under contract next year, but it is a player option, and Norman Powell would be foolish to opt into a player option next year in which he is only going to be paid $11.6 million. And based on how he has played in the last month and a half, and the amount of money some teams are going to have next year in a very vacant free agency class, I would imagine he's probably going to command $20 million or more a season. And so there's some interesting decisions for the Raptors to make here, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how good Norman Powell has been so far this season, some contract scenarios the Raptors have next year, and how those decisions could be made in some possible scenarios that they could make, and what I think is most likely and what is smartest. With that being said, if you guys are here for NBA content, this is a great place to be. I make 5 to 7 or more NBA content videos a week, trade news, player movement, thoughts on teams, players, all that sorts of stuff. So if you guys are interested in that, feel free to subscribe down below and hit the like button if you guys enjoyed the video. But let's get right into it. And so let's just talk about Norman Powell's season so far this year. Now, of course, he did struggle a little bit early on in the season, but found his form, of course, as he normally does. But then with players missing time due to injury, with Lowry missing time, amongst a few others, and then, of course, even more so when a significant portion of the team, including 3 starters, went out due to the virus, Norman Powell's minutes significantly increased. His role obviously significantly increased with him and Kyle Lowry having to bear the load along with Boucher, and then mostly just role players, really. Aaron Baines, Terrence Davis, Paul Watson. You know, it was not great, right? And Norman Powell really picked up that load and showed himself to be a very, very valuable piece for this team. And so in the month of March, he averaged 22 points per game, shooting 46% from deep and 53% from the field, and even better so far in March, averaging 28.5 points per game while shooting 49% from deep, making 4.7 threes per game. He is nearly making 5 threes a game at an unreal efficiency while shooting 55% from the field, playing 36 minutes a night. His production has been otherworldly on the offensive end. His defense is not great by any stretch. When he engages and puts in an effort on the defensive end, he's definitely an above-average defender, but he can be very inconsistent on that end, especially when he has to carry this much of an offensive load, and he can have some mental mishaps. But his offensive production has been so good, and come playoff time when his defense needs to be good, it can be quite solid for you. Now, Norman Powell isn't a creator by any stretch. He's not someone who's a great passer. But like I mentioned, he can be good defensively when he engages. He averages over a steal per game on the month of March. And on a team that he is most likely going to be traded to, he's probably not going to be the main offensive guy like he has been for the Raptors over this stretch. And so he'll be able to focus more on that defensive end. As someone who can play the 2 or the 3, has a bit of versatility there. Although only 6'3", he is a bit of a small forward, but someone who's played there a lot and has the ability to do so. And still has also good handles as well. Still not amazing handles, but they have certainly improved and have led him to be a bit more of a ball-dominant guard when needed. His catch and shoot shooting, off of pin downs, all that type of stuff. His shooting has just gone to a whole other level this season. And so with that being said, because of that, Norman Powell is going to demand a big contract this summer. He is currently owed $11.6 million next season, but that is a player option. And as I mentioned earlier, I think it would be absolutely foolish for Norman Powell to opt into that contract for his financial stability and the fact that he can command way more money than that in the open market as a free agent. And so I fully expect him to opt out of that contract. I don't know if that's a scenario that many Raptors fans or many basketball people in general had considered leading up to this season, because Norman Powell probably wouldn't have gotten much more than that in an open market, and he seems to be content in Toronto. However, there's no debate now whatsoever that Norman Powell is certainly going to get more than $11.6 million in this coming off season, so he will certainly opt out of this contract. And so this is how you have to look at it from a Toronto standpoint. They have Pascal Siakam locked up for the next 3 seasons on a max at $31.3, $33.6, and $35.9 million per year. Fred VanVleet is locked up for the next 3 seasons. OG Anunoby is locked up for the next 4 seasons. And so that's the core right there. And so the main 2 expirings going into next year are Kyle Lowry and Norman Powell, assuming that he will, of course, opt out. And then the other piece of the core being Chris Boucher, who is on one of the best value contracts in the league right now, who is getting paid $7 million next year, and then will be a free agent after that. I have no doubt he'll re-sign with Toronto. It'll just be for how much. But that being said, let's look at it this way. As the roster is currently constructed for next year, and that includes Aaron Baines getting paid $7.3 million on a team option, I have no doubts the Raptors will opt out of that contract, and so that'll take $7.3 million off the books. And then Norman Powell is currently owed $11.6 million next year. However, of course, I'm sure that will also change, and that number will either rise or be gone. And so let's look at the scenario in which he stays and resigns with the Toronto Raptors. And let's bare minimum say he's getting paid $20 million. You could argue in and around that range, you could argue more, you could argue less, but let's just say $20 to $22 million. That is going to put the Raptors at about $100 million in total owed salaries next year. That is without Kyle Lowry involved, in which it is quite possible Kyle Lowry resigns, and it's also quite possible he moves and he leaves and he goes to Philly or something like that. But it is very possible that Kyle Lowry comes back, in which case that's another 20 to 25 to $30 million. And so then you're in a scenario where this Raptors team has $120 to $130 million locked up in their core of Lowry, Siakam, VanVleet, Powell, Chris Boucher, OG Anunoby. And that leaves them in a scenario where that's kind of their team for the next 2 to 3 years, minus Kyle Lowry leaving. But even then, that's not going to be a large lump sum of money that they're going to have under the cap still. They're still only going to have 10 or 15 million at the most to deal with, if that. And so it leaves the team in a spot where they kind of have to decide, is that the core they think that they want to roll with for the next 3 or 4 years, and is that something they think that they can make into, or either organically by internal growth can be a contender? If that's the goal, right? And so you got Siakam, VanVleet, Norm, Boucher, Anunoby, Lowry. That would be your team. And then your bench guys around that, of course. That would be your core. And that's a very good team. There's no doubt about it, right? As guys continue to develop and they get more comfortable together, that is a team that can, on most years, probably get to the second round of the playoffs, if not be a very hard first-round matchup. But I don't know if that's something the Raptors organization wants to settle with their core guys in their prime, in OG, in VanVleet, in Siakam, in Chris Boucher. And so it's quite possible that the Raptors want to be able to try and keep a bit more cap flexibility to be able to make that move or make that signing or make that trade, to be able to raise their ceiling a little bit more to get themselves into a position where they can contend for that title in a couple of years. Now, whether that move will ever exist, we don't know. But you would have to respect the Raptors organization for giving themselves a chance, as opposed to just accepting that they're going to be a team like the Pacers for the last few years, where, or really for the last decade, where the Pacers are always pretty much a lock to get into the playoffs, barring this season, but this season's weird for many reasons. But outside of that, you're not really expecting them to do anything more than maybe get to the second round. And that's what this Raptors team is to me. It would be a very good team, there's no doubt about it, but this isn't a team that screams we're going to be a contender, barring Siakam making another big step and VanVleet taking another big step, which is possible. And maybe that's what they'll bank on, and maybe they'll trade Norman for a piece that fits better, or they'll re-sign Norman and they'll just hope that those internal pieces can be what works. But this is why I think Norman Powell will be traded, because I think the Raptors are going to want a little bit more flexibility, whether it's on a lesser contract, whether it's on acquiring more future assets, whether it's on acquiring someone who has less term, because there's no doubt Norm will get a 4-year deal or potentially even a 5-year deal if the Raptors re-signed him. And so he's going to be locked up for a while. They're going to be tied into a lot of long-term contracts, and so maybe they'll want someone on less term so they can have salary cap flexibility in one of the upcoming summers. I think the Raptors are going to want that flexibility, and that is why I think the reports are coming out that the Raptors are very much looking to trade Norman Powell. No doubt about it that selling high on him is a big part of it, but I think there's a contractual element of this as well that isn't being considered by some people. And so there's no doubt if you can sell high on Norman Powell, there's no doubt Norman Powell's a great player, but if you can sell high on him and get more than he probably is worth, then I think you have to do that. Because Norman Powell's great, but is Norman Powell going to continue putting up 28 points a night for the rest of the next few years? Probably not. He's just probably not, you know? People are going to scheme for him more. People are going to scout him more. He's not going to be on as hot of a streak because, let's be realistic, I don't think there's many people in the NBA, regardless, if they're a main guy and not just shooting wide open shots, they're going to make nearly 5 threes a game, shooting 50% from deep. It's just not a realistic expectation that that's going to hold. And so I would fully expect and would not be fully surprised at all if we see a Norman Powell trade within the next few days. And that's my reasons why. If you guys did enjoy the video, feel free to leave a like down below. And if you guys want more NBA content like this, hit that subscribe button down below. Turn on the bell notifications to get notified when I post another video. With that being said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And I will see you guys when we have more trade news.